The sun was blazing as I pulled up at the red light at the intersection. The heat was relentless, sticky enough to make anyone's patience snap, but I wasn't in a hurry. I was alone in the car, enjoying a rare moment of silence away from the endless chaos of home and work. At 66, I still liked driving myself around the small town of Ashford, a quiet place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. That's when I saw her. A woman, thin and disheveled, barefoot, with tangled hair falling messily over her face. She was standing between cars, holding a baby close to her chest in a worn-out carrier. Her clothes were dirty, faded and torn, the kind of clothes that whispered stories of hardship. The baby's flushed cheeks told me it was sweltering, but the woman's hands were shaking as she counted coins she'd collected from passing drivers. The clinking of change wasn't calm or casual, it was desperate, as if every penny was a lifeline. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. Then I saw her face clearly as she bent down slightly, and my heart stopped. It was Emily, my daughter. I didn't think. I rolled down the window before my brain caught up. Emily? She spun around, eyes wide, not with surprise, but with fear. The kind of fear that makes you want to disappear. She covered her face with one hand, but it was too late. My voice came out before I could stop it. Get in. She hesitated, shaking her head. Dad, not here, just give me a minute. I didn't argue. The horn behind me blared impatiently, and I said more firmly, now. She opened the door and slid into the passenger seat, cradling little Valentina tightly like a lifeline herself. The baby whimpered softly, restless in the heat. I raised the window, shutting out the honking and the noise of the busy street. My breath was heavy. Emily, what on earth are you doing out here? She didn't answer right away, just stroked Valentina's cheek. Then she looked up, eyes haunted. Dad, it's bad. Her voice cracked and folded under the weight of what she was about to say. I forced myself to stay calm, though my heart was pounding like a drum. Where's the car, the house, the things we bought you? Emily swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. They took everything. Hector and his mother, Marjorie. They kept the car, the money. They threw me out of the house. They even threatened to take Valentina away. I felt my hands clench the steering wheel so hard my nails dug into my palms. Why didn't you call me? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. They have my phone. They said if I told you anything, they'd hurt you too. I swallowed the rage and pain twisting inside me and said quietly, not to worry. I'm going to fix this. The light turned green, but I didn't move immediately. Emily's head stayed bowed, and Valentina fussed in her arms. My mind raced. If I went home now, Hector's friends would be watching. If they knew Emily was with me, they'd come for a scene, maybe even claim Valentina was kidnapped. I turned the wheel sharply and headed the opposite way. Dad, where are we going? Don't go home, Emily whispered, panic creeping into her voice. I know, I said, glancing at her worried face in the mirror. We're going somewhere safe first. She clutched Valentina tighter, eyes red and swollen. They'll find us. Hector's got security in that neighborhood. Marjorie knows people everywhere. I nodded. That's why we're not going there. I drove us to a little inn on the outskirts of Ashford, a place barely anyone knew about. The owner was an old friend, Robert. He was a talker but knew when to keep his mouth shut. We slipped in through the side entrance, avoiding the main road. Robert's jaw dropped when he saw Emily. I hushed him with a finger. A quiet room, Robert. The quietest you have. He nodded and sent a young lad up with water and a small fan. Emily just sank onto the bed, clutching Valentina like the baby was the last thing keeping her tethered to this world. I locked the door twice behind us and finally let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Let me see Valentina, I said softly. Emily hesitated but shifted the carrier. The baby was flushed and sweating, my gut twisted, not just from anger anymore, but worry. No baby should ever look this vulnerable. I pulled out a bottle of water, some tissues, and called Robert on the room phone. Robert, get me some infant formula and diapers. Discreetly, please. Understood, Carlos, he said firmly. I like your style. Emily lowered her head again, but I sat beside her. Tell me everything, from the start. Slowly. She wiped her eyes and began, voice broken but steady. At first, Hector was charming. Polite when we met him, always well-dressed, like he'd stepped out of a magazine. But behind closed doors, things changed. He started controlling every little thing Emily did, asking for permission to leave the house, to buy groceries, even to speak to me. Marjorie, his mother, moved in nearby, always checking in, but really just spying. They took control of Emily's money, her house, her car, all in the name of family. Paperwork signed when Emily was exhausted after giving birth, pressured to hand over control. And then 2 weeks ago, they kicked her out. Emily's voice broke as she told me she'd been living under a filthy bridge, begging for change to buy milk for Valentina. I looked at my daughter, at my granddaughter, and something inside me snapped. This ends now, I whispered. Then came the pounding on the door. A man's voice, sweet but venomous. Mr. Turner, I'm here on behalf of Hector. There's a family matter to discuss. Emily froze, clutching Valentina tighter. Her eyes begged me silently to protect her. I raised my hand, signaling her to stay calm. Don't open the door. The knocks grew louder, more urgent. Mr. Turner, this is Diego. Hector sent me. I just want to talk. I cracked the door open just enough to block his view. How did you find us? He laughed, a hollow sound. I was told. You took Emily. Family business. I stared him down. Tell Hector if he wants peace, he'll stop sending people here. Diego's tone darkened. Don't make this difficult. If you don't hand her over, the story changes. I closed the door firmly, locking it twice. Emily trembled, tears streaming. I placed a hand on her shoulder. They're scared because you're safe. Outside, the world buzzed on, but inside that tiny room, a war had just begun. The small room felt heavier after the confrontation, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Emily sat on the edge of the narrow bed, still clutching Valentina, whose soft cries cut through the silence like a fragile plea for normalcy. I pulled up a chair opposite her, my eyes tracing the dirt-smudged lines on her hands, the hands of a woman who had fought battles no daughter should ever face. Emily, I said gently, we need to get organized, not just survive, but fight back. She looked up, eyes glassy but searching for hope. But where do we even start? They have everything. Our home, the car, my money, even the papers. I don't have anything left. I nodded slowly. That's where we begin. We gather every scrap of proof, every document, every witness. We turn their lies against them. Emily's lip trembled. You sound like a lawyer. I gave a tired smile. Funny you say that. I have one on speed dial. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Tom Harris. He's helped me before. If anyone can untangle this mess, it's him. Minutes later, Tom's calm voice came through. I explained quickly, careful not to raise suspicion. After I finished, Tom said, Carlos, this sounds like more than a family spat. I'm sending Daniel, a private investigator, to help. Get Emily somewhere safe. We'll build a case. I hung up and turned to Emily. Help is on the way, but you need to stay hidden. No calls, no messages to anyone from before. They're watching. Emily nodded, swallowing hard. I'm scared, Dad. I reached out, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. Good. Fear keeps you sharp, but it doesn't get to win. Just then, a knock sounded softly at the door. I froze. Emily's eyes widened, heart pounding in her chest. Who is it? I called out, steadying my voice. Robert, came the reply. Your packages arrived, formula and diapers. I opened the door just enough to let the young man in, grateful for the distraction. He handed over a small brown bag, then gave me a knowing look. If you need anything else, you know where to find me. No questions asked. I nodded, relief washing over me. Robert was our lifeline in this storm. As he left, I closed the door and looked at Emily. Now, let's feed that baby. While Emily prepared Valentina's bottle, I paced the room, mind racing. Memories flashed. how Hector had smiled at our family gatherings, all charm and politeness. Marjorie, with her sharp eyes and colder smile, pretending to be a doting mother-in-law, but always watching, always waiting. I realized then, this wasn't just about money or property. It was about control, about breaking Emily down until she was nothing but a shadow. Valentina's soft suckling filled the room with a fragile peace, but I knew it wouldn't last. This was just the beginning. Outside, the streets of Ashford carried on, oblivious to the battle unfolding in that tiny, locked room. But I had a promise to keep, a promise to bring my daughter and granddaughter back from the edge, and I was ready to fight. But deep down, a question gnawed at me. How far would Hector and Marjorie go to keep their grip? And who else was hiding in the shadows waiting to strike? The next morning dawned gray and heavy, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones and refuses to let go. Emily sat on the floor of the cramped living room, her worn cardigan loosely draped over a sleeveless blouse, the buttons undone just enough to reveal the gentle curve of her collarbone. Her faded jeans hugged her slender legs, and her bare feet curled beneath her as she cradled Valentina, who was now peacefully dozing on a thin blanket. A delicate silver locket hung from Emily's neck, catching the faint morning light, a small touch of elegance amid the chaos surrounding us. I sat across from her, trying to steady my shaking hands as I unpacked the small pile of documents and photos Tom had sent over. The papers were scattered across the battered coffee table, some stained with coffee rings, others dog-eared from hurried handling. There were bank statements showing suspicious withdrawals, photos of home repairs that Hector claimed to have paid for but never did, and a letter from the housing association questioning recent ownership changes. Emily's eyes flicked up, tired but determined. "Dad, I never thought I'd see all this proof. It's like a puzzle finally coming together." I nodded. "It's more than proof. It's our weapon." She shifted, the fabric of her blouse brushing against her skin, sending a subtle warmth through the room. "I can't help feeling exposed, like I'm standing here in my own skin with nothing to hide." I gave her a small, reassuring smile. "You're stronger than you think, Emily, and you're not alone anymore." Just then, the doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, slicing through the quiet tension. Emily's head snapped up, eyes wide with panic, as if expecting Hector or his goons to be on the doorstep. "Stay here," I whispered, rising and moving cautiously to the door. Peering through the peephole, I spotted a young woman, mid-20s, with a ponytail streaked with blonde and eyes bright with purpose. She held a small box of baby supplies, diapers, wipes, and a few toys. "Emily?" she called softly when I opened the door. "Natalie," I said, stepping aside to let her in. Natalie was one of those rare people whose warmth fills a room. She smiled gently at Emily, who barely managed a nod, still clutching Valentina. "I'm here to help," Natalie said, setting the box down. "You don't have to do this alone." Emily's eyes shimmered with gratitude, but also fatigue. "Thank you. It's been a long road." Natalie pulled out her phone and showed us a list of contacts, local aid groups, legal clinics, even a few people who could testify to the conditions Emily had endured. "Let's start building your support network," Natalie said. "And don't worry, I'm tough. I can handle Hector's kind." I chuckled quietly. That's what I like to hear. As Natalie organized the supplies and we mapped out the next steps, Emily's hands trembled slightly, fingers brushing the delicate locket again. The room felt charged, hope mingling with fear, strength battling vulnerability. But just as things seemed to settle, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You can't hide forever. We're watching." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of those words settle like a dark cloud. Looking at Emily and Natalie, I forced a smile. This is far from over. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a chilling thought whispered, what if the real danger wasn't just Hector and Marjorie, but someone much closer? That evening, the sky outside was a deep, bruised purple, the kind of dusk that swallows every last hint of daylight and leaves you wondering what's lurking in the shadows. Inside the modest rented flat where Emily, Valentina, and I had taken refuge, the air was thick with tension and the faint scent of vanilla from a flickering candle on the windowsill. Emily sat curled on the worn sofa, her soft cream sweater slipping off one shoulder, revealing the smooth line of her neck and the faint freckles that stretched across her collarbone. Her jeans were snug, hugging her slender hips, and her bare feet tapped nervously against the threadbare rug. She held Valentina close, the baby's tiny fingers tracing lazy circles on her mother's arm, the only sign of innocence in a room heavy with worry. Natalie was busy on her laptop, her sharp eyes darting between screens, fingers flying across the keyboard as she pulled up information on Hector Mendoza and his mother, Marjorie. "They're well connected," she muttered, "but they've been sloppy. Financial records here, property transfers there. We're starting to see cracks." I paced the small space, my polished leather shoes clicking softly on the wooden floor, the weight of my tailored jacket a stark contrast to the disheveled chaos around me. I stopped by the window, staring out at the quiet street, the street lamp casting long shadows that danced like ghosts. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message. I hesitated before opening it. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy clip of Emily, someone who looked like her, on the streets, begging for coins, with Valentina strapped to her chest. A cruel voiceover sneered, "Look at the scam artist playing the victim. Her own father sent her here to drum up sympathy." My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms until they bled. "They're spreading lies, trying to destroy her." Emily's head snapped up, eyes blazing despite the exhaustion. "I didn't ask for this, Dad. They want to break me." I stepped closer, voice low but fierce. "Then we'll give them a fight they'll never forget." Natalie looked up from her laptop, determination etched across her face. "We need to get ahead of this. Damage control, public statements, witnesses coming forward. If this video goes viral, it could ruin everything." Emily swallowed, biting her lip. "I feel naked, like everyone's watching my worst moments." I reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "You're not naked. You're real, and real people win." The room was silent for a heartbeat before the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness. The candle sputtered, casting eerie shadows that twisted and stretched. A knock came from the door, soft, deliberate. Emily's breath hitched, Valentina squirmed in her arms. I moved to the door, peeking through the peephole to see a delivery man holding a plain package. I opened the door cautiously, took the box, and closed it quickly. Inside was an envelope with no return address. I opened it to find a single photograph. Emily, standing outside a grocery store, a stranger's gaze caught in the frame, but the expression on her face was unreadable. On the back, a scrawled message. "We're closer than you think." My heart hammered. "They're watching us. Always." Emily's lips trembled, but her eyes held a steely resolve. "Then we make sure they regret it." As the candle flickered back to life, casting a warm glow over us, I knew one thing for certain. This was no longer just a battle for property or custody. It was a war for Emily's soul, and for Valentina's future, and the enemy was lurking somewhere in the dark. The next morning, a sharp chill hung in the air, unusual for early spring in Ashford. I found Emily in the kitchen, standing by the window with a soft, worn scarf wrapped loosely around her neck. Her auburn hair caught the pale sunlight, cascading in gentle waves over a fitted blouse that hinted at the curve of her shoulders. Her faded jeans were paired with scuffed ankle boots, just enough to remind me she was still fighting, still holding on to who she was beneath the exhaustion. Valentina, nestled in a baby sling, gurgled softly, her tiny fingers clutching at the fabric. Emily's delicate silver bracelet caught the light as she brushed a stray curl behind her ear, her eyes distant but alert. "Dad," she began quietly, "I don't think Hector's just after the house or the money anymore. It's like he wants to erase me. Make me invisible." I nodded, folding my arms, my own tailored jacket now hanging on the coat rack, a symbol of the worlds clashing around us. "We can't let that happen." Just then, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. This time, it was a location, a cafe downtown with a note. Meet me. We need to talk. Alone. I frowned, showing Emily. This could be a trap. She looked up, her green eyes sharp. Or an opportunity. Natalie appeared in the doorway carrying a notepad, her expression serious. If you're going, you need backup. And a plan. We spent the next hour crafting the perfect strategy. I insisted on going with Emily, but she shook her head firmly. No, Dad, this is mine. You've done enough. That left me with no choice but to prepare her as best I could. I handed her a small recorder, discreet but powerful, and a burner phone. Record everything. Don't trust anyone. Emily slipped the items into her jacket pocket, the fabric slightly rumpled from the countless restless nights. She straightened up, her posture strong despite the weariness shadowing her eyes. When she left, the door closing softly behind her, I felt a strange mix of pride and dread knotting in my chest. Hours later, my phone buzzed with a new message, an audio file. I pressed play. Emily's voice, clear but cautious, filled the room. I'm here, alone. The place is crowded, but the back corner is quiet. Whoever sent the message is late. A pause, then a muffled voice replied, low and hesitant. Emily, it's time to stop running. We can come to an agreement. Emily's voice sharpened. I'm listening. The voice belonged to Hector, calm but with an edge that sent chills down my spine. I know you're scared, but fighting only makes it worse. For you and Valentina. Emily responded steadily. You've already taken everything else. What more do you want? There was a silence, then a sigh. You don't understand the stakes. We could make this easier. Emily's laugh was bitter. Easier for who? You? The message ended abruptly. I sat back, heart pounding. This wasn't just about control anymore. It was a game of power, and Hector was playing for keeps. And now the question hung heavy in the air. Would Emily keep fighting, or find a way to survive in their world? Night had fallen over Ashford, cloaking the town in shadows and silence broken only by distant traffic and the occasional bark of a restless dog. Inside the small, rented flat where Emily and I had holed up with little Valentina, the tension was thick enough to slice with a knife. Emily sat on the edge of the sagging armchair, her soft wool sweater slipping down one shoulder, revealing the delicate curve of her neck and the faint freckles that dusted her skin. Her dark jeans hugged her slender legs, and her bare feet rested lightly on the worn wooden floor. Valentina was nestled against her chest, fingers curling around the edge of Emily's scarf, her sleepy eyes half closed. I stood by the window, my hands clenched into fists as I stared out at the quiet street below. The glow of a street lamp illuminated a figure moving swiftly, too purposeful to be a coincidence. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You have 24 hours. After that, no more warnings. My blood ran cold. I turned to Emily, whose face was pale but resolute. We need to act, now. The next hours blurred into a whirlwind. Tom and Daniel coordinated from their offices, while Natalie arranged for emergency protective measures. I packed a bag with essentials, documents, phones, a change of clothes, and prepared for what might come next. Emily paced the room, each step measured but tense. She stopped suddenly and looked at me. Dad? I'm scared. Not just for me or Valentina, but for you. If they know you're involved. I cut her off gently. I'm not going anywhere. We face this together. Her eyes glistened with tears, but she nodded. Then, just as the clock struck midnight, there was a sharp knock at the door, 3 quick raps that echoed ominously. Emily froze, clutching Valentina tighter. I moved cautiously to the peephole and saw the silhouette of a man, tall, broad-shouldered, but face obscured by the dim light. Who is it? I called out, voice steady. Delivery, came the muffled reply. Something about the voice didn't sit right. I didn't move. The knock came again, more insistent. Emily whispered, Dad, don't open it. I stepped back, heart pounding. Then the lock clicked. Before I could react, the door burst open and a group of men stormed inside. Chaos erupted. I grabbed Emily and Valentina, shielding them as best as I could. In the scramble, a sharp pain seared through my side. Someone's fist, or perhaps the edge of a heavy object. I tasted blood but refused to fall. "Get out! Run!" I shouted. Emily hesitated, torn between me and the danger pressing in. Valentina cried out, frightened. Summoning every ounce of strength, I pushed Emily toward the back door. "Go! Now!" She darted out into the night, clutching Valentina as if her life depended on it, because it did. I stayed behind just long enough to lock the door, then collapsed against the wall, breathing ragged but alive. In the darkness, a cold voice whispered close to my ear, "This isn't over, Turner." And I knew it was true. The war had just turned deadly. The dawn broke over Ashford like a pale promise, soft light filtering through threadbare curtains into the cramped, unfamiliar room where Emily and Valentina had found refuge. The air was cool, crisp with morning quiet, but beneath that calm tension still coiled tight like a spring ready to snap. Emily sat on the edge of the narrow bed, her loose cotton blouse slipping just enough to reveal the graceful line of her shoulder and the delicate collarbone beneath. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, strands escaping to frame a face that wore exhaustion like armor. Valentina lay beside her on a faded quilt, her tiny fingers twitching as she dreamed. I knocked softly on the door and stepped inside, careful not to startle them. I was wearing my usual worn jacket and sensible shoes. Nothing flashy, just the man I'd always been, standing at the edge of a new battle. "Morning," I said quietly. Emily looked up, eyes heavy but steady. "Did you find anything?" I nodded, pulling out a folder thick with papers. "Yes." Daniel traced some recent transactions, money moving through accounts connected to Marjorie. "It's not just theft, it's laundering." Emily frowned. "So they're hiding what they stole?" "Exactly, but there's more." I spread out photos and documents on the small table. "We've got proof they falsified signatures, forged documents to transfer the house and car." Her fingers brushed the edges of the papers, trembling slightly. This could take them down." I smiled faintly. "That's the plan." Just then, a soft chime from my phone broke the stillness. A message from Tom. "Meeting set. Hector wants to talk. Noon, public park. No surprises." Emily's eyes widened. "He's coming?" I nodded. "He wants a face-to-face. Probably to intimidate, but we'll be ready." Natalie appeared in the doorway, a coffee cup in one hand, her other hand steady as she handed Valentina a small toy. "I'm coming too," she said firmly. "No way I'm letting you do this alone." Emily smiled faintly, the first real warmth I'd seen in days. "Thanks." As we prepared to leave, Emily slipped on a simple necklace, a thin gold chain with a tiny heart pendant. It caught the sunlight just right, a small emblem of hope and love amid the storm. Outside, the park was busy with morning joggers and dog walkers, unaware of the brewing storm. We found a quiet bench near the edge, shadows of trees dappling the ground. Hector arrived right on time, his suit crisp, his smile thin and practiced. He looked every inch the successful man, but his eyes were cold, calculating. "Carlos," he greeted me smoothly, then turned to Emily. "Emily." She stood tall, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Let's talk," Hector said. I watched closely as the conversation unfolded, words like compromise, family, and future thrown around like chess moves. But beneath the polished veneer, I saw the cracks, the arrogance, the threat, the desperation, and I knew this meeting was just another battleground. Because the real war wasn't about money or property anymore, it was about who would control the story, and who would control Valentina's future. As Hector's voice droned on, I caught Emily's hand, squeezing it gently. No matter what came next, we were ready. But just as the sun peeked through the leaves, a shadow shifted nearby, someone watching, and in that moment, the game changed once again. The afternoon light filtered through the lace curtains of the small cafe where the meeting had taken place, casting delicate patterns on the wooden floor. Emily sat quietly on the worn leather sofa, her blouse slightly unbuttoned at the top, revealing the soft curve of her collarbone and the faint shimmer of a silver pendant resting just above her heart. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands escaping to frame her determined face. Valentina slept peacefully in her stroller nearby, her tiny hand clutching a soft blanket. I sat across from Emily, a steaming cup of tea warming my hands. Natalie was scrolling through messages on her phone, eyes sharp and alert. The meeting with Hector had ended hours ago, but the tension lingered like a thick fog. Hector's polished words still echoed in my mind, empty promises coated with thinly veiled threats. "Dad?" Emily said softly, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "He thinks he can scare me into giving up, but I won't let him." I reached across the table, brushing a stray curl behind her ear. "And you won't have to. We have the law on our side now." Natalie nodded. "We've gathered enough evidence to start legal proceedings. Hector and Marjorie won't see it coming." Suddenly my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "You're making powerful enemies. Watch your back." I frowned, showing Emily and Natalie. "They're desperate." Emily's eyes hardened. "Let them come. I'm done running." As the evening deepened, a plan took shape. We would file the complaints, expose the fraud, and fight for custody. But beneath the strategy, a darker truth simmered. Someone close had been feeding Hector information. Later that night, as Emily tucked Valentina into her crib, I noticed the faintest flicker of movement outside the window, a shadow slipping away into the darkness. A chill ran down my spine. Who was watching us? And how deep did this betrayal go? The battle lines were drawn, not just in court, but in the very heart of the family. And the next move could change everything. As I closed the door behind me, I whispered to myself, "Trust no one." Because sometimes, the fiercest enemy wears the face of family. The early morning mist clung to the quiet streets of Ashford as I pulled up outside the modest flat where Emily and Valentina had been staying. The soft hum of a distant lawnmower mingled with the bird song, an ordinary day masking the storm brewing beneath the surface. Emily stood on the small porch, wrapped in a deep navy coat that hugged her slender frame. Her scarf, loosely knotted, fluttered gently in the breeze, revealing just a glimpse of the delicate gold chain she never took off. Her eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the street as if expecting trouble at any moment. Valentina giggled softly in her stroller, her chubby cheeks rosy from the cool air. I stepped out of the car, adjusting my jacket against the chill. Natalie was already waiting by the door, arms crossed and eyes narrowed, a guardian ready for battle. "We can't keep looking over our shoulders forever," Emily said quietly as I approached. "No," I agreed, "but today we fight back." Inside, the atmosphere was tense, but determined. Tom had arranged a meeting with a key witness. Natalie had tracked down a former employee of Hector's who was ready to talk. This was the break we needed. As we gathered around the kitchen table, the doorbell rang sharply. Emily's hand shot out, gripping mine. "Not again!" I opened the door cautiously. A tall man with a hesitant smile stood there, holding a thick envelope. "Mr. Turner? I'm James Carter. I have information that might help." Relief and suspicion warred across Emily's face as I invited him in. James laid out a trove of documents, emails, invoices, even recorded conversations exposing Hector's manipulation and Marjorie's shadowy dealings. Emily's fingers trembled as she sifted through the evidence. This could change everything. But then, a sudden noise from the hall made us all freeze, a soft click, almost imperceptible. The lights flickered, a shadow darted past the window. Natalie moved swiftly, locking the door. "We're not alone," she said grimly. "They're closing in." In that moment, the fragile safety we'd built shattered, and the fight for justice became a fight for survival. Because when the darkness comes for you, it doesn't knock politely. It breaks down the door and drags you into the unknown. The storm outside raged like a beast unleashed, rain hammering against the windows and wind howling through the narrow streets of Ashford. Inside the cramped flat, the tension was electric. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, every creak of the old wooden floor a whispered threat. Emily sat on the worn sofa, her blouse slipping just enough to reveal the smooth curve of her neck and the faint shimmer of a silver bracelet that caught the dim light. Her eyes, fierce and unyielding, stared out the window as Valentina slept soundly in her crib, oblivious to the danger closing in. I stood by the door, heart pounding, listening to the faint sounds outside, the rustle of footsteps, the soft murmur of voices too low to understand. Suddenly the power cut, plunging us into darkness. Natalie flicked on her phone's flashlight, casting a narrow beam that danced wildly against the walls. "We have to move," I said, voice low but steady. Emily nodded, gathering Valentina in her arms, her fingers clutching the delicate locket around her neck. We slipped out through the back door, the rain soaking through our clothes as we hurried into the night, each step a battle against the cold and fear. As we disappeared into the shadows, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You can run, but you can't hide." I glanced at Emily, whose jaw was set, eyes burning with determination. "We won't run forever," she said. "One day we take back what's ours." And I knew she was right, because beneath the darkness, beneath the threats and the lies, a fire was growing, a fire that would burn through the deceit, a fire that would reclaim a family's name, and in the distance, beneath the storm-swept sky, the first rays of dawn began to break. But the question remained, who would be left standing when the smoke cleared, and what secrets would finally be revealed in the light? The battle was far from over, and the story was just beginning.